Hey, what's going on, everybody? Tobin here with you. Hope everybody's doing fantastic out there as we head on into the weekend. So the Miami Heat will have a matchup coming up on Saturday night against the Dallas Mavericks. I will say, as a twist of scheduling fate, unlucky and yet still kind of cool, the Miami Heat, there's only 2 games tomorrow in the association. The Miami Heat happen to be one of the teams that is playing out of the 4, and they also happen to be in a market where they have 2 teams in the Final Four who are also playing tomorrow night. So I don't know what that's going to have. If that's going to have an effect on crowd. I'm sure that'll have an effect on TV ratings. But that is a twist of misfortune because this is usually supposed to be a very fun matchup. You're talking about Luka coming into town with Kyrie Irving. 2 teams that are very much in a disappointing spot. And it's funny, you think about these 2 teams that are real rivals. They have 2 finals against each other. There's no love lost between, I think, Mark Cuban and the front office there. Between them, it's just, it's what's going to happen when you have 2 highly publicized, hotly contested finals where Mark Cuban claims cheating in one, and then the other, of course, was the first year of the Big 3. So you would think this is going to be one that was going to have a lot of focus on it and a big time spotlight on it. And it is still an important game for Miami. Don't get me wrong. You're going into tonight, you have a big matchup with Brooklyn and Atlanta, with neither one of those results having a really good place for Miami because Atlanta's nipping on their heels. The Heat are still trying to catch the Nets. So, but they put themselves in that position. One of the news and notes that's going into tomorrow is Bam Adebayo is questionable for the matchup. Apparently is a little bit banged up. He has a hip bruise. And it is always just noticeable when Bam is on the injury report because he don't get hurt very much. I mean, he's played 72 of the 77 games so far this season. So as durable as they come for Miami, and especially with as physical a game as he typically plays, and the athleticism that he plays with, doesn't get hurt a whole lot. I mean, the biggest stretch of his injuries in his career was that weird thumb injury that happened last year, which was kind of on a fluke thing. And then, of course, in the finals with the arm getting messed up. But usually is a guy who is very, very durable and usually reliable. And it's kind of an interesting thing because you have this on top of the idea that Bam is already, going through some stuff. It was interesting to see him talk about this. I'm getting these quotes from Anthony Chang of the Miami Herald after he had a streak of 87 straight games scoring in double digits that ended against the Knicks the other night. And he had just 9 points. He was 4-10 shooting, only got to the free throw line a couple times. And he said, quote, "It was definitely an off night, but also everybody is packing the paint now, so it's not like those comfortable shots that I got in the first half of the season. Now it's more, if you can throw it to me in the pocket, it's a quick pass to my teammate." And there's definitely been an adjustment there. I don't know if that's a case of Miami changing the model of how they've played or if teams are adjusting to Bam. Certainly you talk about a guy who had a great first part of the season, and you want to even say first half, like first 2/3 of the season, because the majority of the season is played before the All-Star break. But a guy who goes from where he was at this year, where he was averaging 22 points a game, 10 rebounds, and, was shooting 44%, but was getting to the free throw line. One of the big things that Bam said coming into this year is that he wanted to get 18 attempts up a game. And he was nearing that. He was at 16 attempts a game, basically. And that was a big goal of him, which was up from, the 13 that he had last year, which was a career high. And last year, was getting to the free throw line about the same early on, in the year. He had about 6 attempts last year, and he was about at that before the All-Star break. So a lot of those numbers have come down because his numbers are just down across the board since the All-Star break, in the 18 games since the All-Star break. He's averaging 18 points a game. He's averaging over 7 rebounds a game, and he is shooting 52%, which is about a career low for him over that span. And I'm talking about lower than what he had his rookie year. And his attempts per game have also gone down. Bam is only taking in field goal attempts 13 a game, which is not in line with where he wanted to be. It's more in line of what it was last year for him. Obviously, he was shooting at a much more efficient clip last year, but you're talking about basically this almost a 20-game span since the All-Star break. He's shooting a career low. He's taking a career low in attempts. And a lot of it's confounding. Because this is a guy that felt like going into the All-Star break, he was playing with an all-time confidence in his game. You know, we would see some of these games that he would take over. We would see these things where he was really confident in his mid-range game. He was very confident in the difficulty of the shots he was taking. We'd see these takeover games that Bam was having for this team. And to see that just kind of fall off the way that it has, it leaves you wondering. Like, I don't think it's a lack of confidence, but I definitely think that over the last couple of games, I've seen a guy who has looked like he is pressing a little bit. I think that in his shot selection, in some of the defensive decisions that he's making, he just looks like a guy who's a little bit in his head right now. And for those who watch this channel, you guys know I'm a big fan of Bam. The way he carries himself on the court, off the court, what he represents the organization. Like I really think highly of him. And so, yeah, I watch these things with a little bit of confusion as to why they are where they are. He has, he has a piece of the fan base that was really, they always look for something. He's one of those guys where it feels like everybody's always looking for something to badger on. But you talk about a guy who has grown his offensive game in places where everybody's asked him to. He has always been one of the best defenders in the league, and just plays with durability, toughness, doesn't miss games in a league where everybody's looking to maintenance program and take games off. That's really not his style. And, typically a lot of big men have guys who run the offense, set things up for him. And this has been a very confounding season for him because you haven't had your point guard in Kyle Lowry. You go with a guy in Gabe Vincent who, is still developing those skills of he's still more of a naturally scoring first point guard. He is, usually had really good chemistry with Tyler Hero, but he's also had to adjust to a new front court mate who does a couple of things that kind of take things out of hand. Bam mentioned to Anthony Chang about getting into transition. He says, watching film, figuring out the best way to score is probably in transition because they can't load. So going into transition, trying to get my buckets there. And I do think that with having Kevin Love in that lineup, I haven't done like a breakdown of this or anything, but I just think naturally watching the way the two of them play, Kevin is gobbling up rebounds. Kevin does take away some of those boards, but I think one of the things that those boards do is you can see from time to time Kevin Love gets it, and he does like to get that big hit-ahead pass. And I think a lot of the times when you maybe have two of the same guy going for rebounds, what does that do? That could take the ball out of Bam Adebayo's hands. And Bam is one of the unique skills where he gets the rebound and he can bring the ball up the court because he's a skilled handler, especially for a big man. And I think that has been one of those things where like he maybe not get that full head of steam where a lot of these guys, we could see Bam, going and going down the lane on dudes like you do when you want to see those guys who get those big strides going. A Giannis, for example, where he gets the ball in his hands and he can be a freight train going down the middle. And I think one of the things that this new starting lineup can kind of affect is, well, you have a new guy who's also getting some rebounds. He's looking for other guys down the paint. Now you're having to get Bam more in a set spot where guys can load up against him or try and double him up or take him out of his game or things like that. So it's one of my theories. Now, I don't want to blame all of Bam's struggles on Kevin Love. Like at the point of you're the max guy, you have the mantle, you're taking these pictures with, Udonis Haslem, D Wade. Everybody knows like you're the culture cornerstone, if you will. Some of it has to be on you too. Like you got to find at this point of his career, at this age of his career, he does have to find ways where he's got to adjust. He's got to be better. He's got to try and find ways to fit in. I just think that it's a matter of watching a guy that is still trying to figure some things out. Will it get figured out in time for play-in postseason? I don't know. I think that I definitely saw a guy after the performance that he had against Toronto and how he kind of got taken out of the rebounding game, did rally late, although I think that it was a little too late for the team. you saw a guy who really tried to take that defensive and rebounding energy and put that into the focus of the Knicks game, which is kind of why I think the scoring wasn't really where it was even at, even post All-Star game. So definitely feel like he's a guy that's feeling some things out right now. Does not feel like the guy who was playing with this uber confidence. I think he's a confident player, but I don't think he has like that forgetful FU mentality that Tyler plays with, where Tyler is like, I will go 0 for 9 and I will be just as cold-blooded killer in the fourth quarter, even if the game hasn't gone my way. I don't know if he has that in him yet. I don't know if he has that part of it, because I think it took him a while to get from be the system guy, be the guy who gets everybody open, be the unselfish guy, to be a little bit more selfish, take your shots if you're feeling it, feel the game out. Now it's a matter of, okay, if the game's not going my night, not going my way, can you still take over and be in that spot? So these are, I think, all the developments of a guy who's still young, but is also in the cusp of has to be able to adjust to the adjustment that the league is bringing to him. But I will say, if they don't have him, and when they don't have him, it still feels like a disaster when he's not on the court. They still ask a whole hell of a lot of him to be. It's such an interesting thing with him, because like a lot of people compare Bam to Draymond Green, right? A lot of people compare him to like the engine that kind of makes the machine go. But in a weird way, he's not, because everybody puts this pressure on him that he also, and I think he wants this too, he wants to be a scorer. He wants to be a guy who can be the go-to guy, can be one of the go-to stars on the team, not just be the unselfish driver of everything. And it's like, I do feel like where the team was at, they were trying to facilitate some things, and it's almost like they've asked Bam to take a step back in some ways, and you could kind of see in the fewer shot attempts since the All-Star break. But I don't know if it's necessarily had a positive effect on the team. And I think clearly you've seen how many big losses this team has had, and I mean that by deficit, that while things were a struggle going into that All-Star break, and yeah, I could understand the need for some change, I don't think that change for change's sake is necessarily a good thing. And I don't necessarily think that the changes that they've made have had a positive influence on the team or some of the players on the roster.